I think we can start. We have around 40 minutes again. So up to you, Qiufan. I've asked you about movie industry and whether this is a good thing or a bad thing in your point of view.
Yeah, it's like everything else, always good and bad sides. So um, I think the Wandering Earth is a phenomenon movie for Chinese film industry, not only science fiction as a genre. So it's like boosting the interest and also the the capital, the investment of film industry
Hmm.
to invest some money on producing Chinese science fiction movie because they see the potential there. But the problem is the whole industry is not ready yet. It's immature. So everything the director, the scriptwriter, the VFX, the actors, the concept artists. So everything is not ready yet. So we just steal things from Hollywood movies, from you know, from from Star Wars, Star Trek, or whatsoever. So it's not systematically built up the system. So we still need a long time to build up the whole industry, and then we can producing this kind of science fiction movie, no matter big budget or middle small budget, like continuously producing this above average production value uh, movies. But now the problem is after the COVID-19, all the cinemas are shutting down, so it's not recovering yet. So a lot of film companies or cinema companies, they couldn't afford to pay the rent and to pay the salaries. So people go bankrupt, suicide, so commit suicide.
Oh
Just
my God.
one, yeah, a vice president of a very big film company just jumped out of the window from 18th floor, just commit suicide last week. So it's so desperate uh, to everyone who works in the film industry right now. So unless we can see the reopening of the cinemas, or we can only make things in a smaller budget and only
Mm.
put them online. So a Chinese version of Netflix or Amazon. So, but still, is even more even much immature. So everything is like in B class production. So it's very cheesy produced and mostly like comedy and romance. So nothing science fiction yet.
Mm.
So we can see that still a long way to go. And from the author side, one good thing is like you can make some money out of like the copyright, the adaptation right, the option, right? But another thing is like it might be a misleading to those people who really try to get their stories be transformed into the visual form of art. So they might write something um, to the taste of those film producers, to the directors. So they try to guessing what the market wants. So it's not a good way. It's not the right way in my perspective. So you always need to stick to your own writing, your own stories, rather than you try to please somebody, try to please the market, try to please the film industry, try to please the money. So that's totally wrong because if you do that, um, so what's the point? So it's not in your control. It's not in your hands. So even it was adapted into a movie or a TV series, so everything will be changed by the director, by the scriptwriter, even the stars. So there's nothing under your control. So all you can do is like writing your own stories and be the be a writer, be a real writer. So yeah, to me it's like that.
Yeah, I see your point. Of course, you're right in many ways. Probably some author would be fascinated or seduced by the fact that they could get a lot of money and become a full-time writer. That's probably one of the reasons. But then, as you said, um, when you go to the big industry, the big pretends to have a saying. So it's a difficult situation, I think. I just hope that I remember we were in a conversation with Xia Jia one night in Beijing, and she was kind of scared because a new generation of writers could be, bought, completely acquired by the film industry, and then there was no science fiction writing anymore, right? You remember?
Yes, some kind of yeah. So yeah, I think the thing that uh, first of all, the market and the industry itself is immature, and for the mature industry, it should have like the four, how to say, like the different levels of workers, like a skilled
Sì,
professional
adesso
workers
c'è.
to do different.
Qui poi, mute.
Oops.
Sorry.
Yes,
Sorry.
I will mute.
So we should have like the enough skilled workers to do different kinds of works. So for this kind of like a matured or skilled workers, you have to like calculate them during the development of this industry. So it's like the circle, and if the circle itself is like the healthy circle, so you make a movie, and during this process you can just feed up your workers, and they can get experience and like the, how to say, like the they got like the name from what they have finished, they completed, and then they can got this kind of like experience to do their next work. And so we, and even though, for example, the movie stars, the actress and actors, you have to cultivate them to be like a science fiction movie stars.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if you have really famous actor, and he or she actor, and so he used to be in some, for example, traditional fantasy Chinese style fantasy stories, or like a modern city romance stories, and then suddenly his face appeared in a science fiction movie. Maybe the audience at first sight, they may feel it's not that right. Sometimes the audience can tell that the film is not right. So maybe he have to do more than one science fiction movies to establish his kind of like, I don't know how to describe this, like some of the quality, the feeling of like a science fiction movie star. So what is the thing that especially, for example, the screenwriting section, we do not have any very matured science fiction screenwriters. So what is happening is that the industry, the companies, they have been recruiting science fiction writers to write a script. But the point is that this, because of this immatureness of the industry, which means that to cultivate a mature science fiction screenwriter, you have to pay more effort and money, and to give them more chance to make them to have their name and have enough experience to do this job in a right way. So for a young science fiction writer, if they choose to pay more time and effort and attention in like a screenwriting, which means that they have to take more risks in doing so. So what will mostly likely to happen is that they may just they may just got failure before they finally got a success. So what I'm thinking that maybe for especially the younger writers, it's not a very good idea to take this risk in like the screenwriting as a like the full-time job right now. Yeah.
Thank you. I will open up now some questions from the public, and have the first one from Rob Price. So he refers to the economic changes in the 80s and 90s and their effects on the lifestyle in China. So the question is, if you can pinpoint something that specifically influenced you as a sci-fi writer and your writing because of these. Donnie?
I can take that.
Yep.
Because I was born in Guangdong province, so it's very close to Hong Kong, and there's a lot of like imported movie from an illegal way. So you can see that like the pirate videotape or VCD or DVD back in that age. So I watched I would say Star Wars and Star Trek since I was I think it's around 10 or so, so maybe 8 or 9. So it's something like totally shocking. So I start to write my first story. Actually, it's an imitation of Star Wars. So it's like laser guns and starships and robots shooting each other. So I think it's the very beginning trigger of science fiction to me. So, and after that, I watched like almost everything. So I can find on TV. So Alien, Jurassic Park, Terminator. So everything, no matter it's good or bad. So I watch everything science fiction related, and also reading a lot of fictions, like those classic ones, Verne, Asimov, Clarke, everything, Heinlein.
So how happened that you become such a good writer?
I think because I go to the university and I study literature and film arts. So I read some classics after that. So I realized the positioning of science fiction in history of literature is not as high as I imagined before. So I try to steal and learn something from those so-called mainstream writers and see how I can integrate it, or like we can build up something from there, and also from something from Chinese traditional literature. There's something very good and very science fiction like stories back in history. So I think it would be very interesting. Yeah, so that's my story.
Yeah, okay. Then I have another question specifically for Xia Jia, coming from Laura Modini, and it's more related to the female, and let's say she asked you if you read Margaret Atwood and Marion Bradley, and she asked if patriarchy is overcome in China or in your story, or you still have to deal with it in your stories, rather. So in your stories, the female writers, or in general, they do imagine a free society, a society free from ideologies, and how is being a woman imagined in this kind of, in your stories, for example?
Yeah, because I was still thinking about like the last question about what have influenced me as a science fiction writer.
Yeah, but feel free to answer both. Just don't make it too long, okay?
Yeah, okay. Just a very interesting story to share. That what has happened.
Okay.
It was happened in 1999. That year's there's like the Gaokao in China. It's like the national exam for the college entrance. So in 1999, the Chinese literature exam, they give like the writing prompt as a science fiction topic that the students have to write an essay on the title as like if the memory can be transplanted. So such story. So this it was a very historical moment for the Chinese science fiction development in 1990s. And what has happened is that just after that year, in 1999, I entered into the high school. And my first writing assignment from our Chinese teacher is a very similar topic, that if something can be transplanted. So which gave me an opportunity to create my very first science fiction story in my life, and which was a very long one, about like the thousand of Chinese characters. But that story never published. But I think sometimes I thought that I think that if there wasn't that writing prompt of the national exam, maybe maybe yes or maybe not, I would not I would became a science fiction writer. So that's a interesting story. So another question about like the female, like the gender identity as a science fiction writing. So for me, I think what is important is that science fiction itself should be a kind of like a, if we can name it like the critical theory or critical thought, that it should be a way of ask questions about, like, for example, why not, or what else, and to criticize, or to like to make to a doubt about what seemed to be common sense, seemed to be reality, which seemed to never change and will never change in the future. So science fiction should ask question: is that real? And what else if we do not believe that this kind of common sense or ideology is really something never changed? And I think what is very interesting and experience and experience is that the gender advantage, the gender point of view should be a very good, can give a very good advantage to give this kind of, or to help you to establish this kind of critical thought. So you, as a female writer, you should not just only give questions about the conditions, about, like, so for example the gender issues, but you have to give different kinds of doubts to everything which looks so normal, looks so right. So I think what is important is that as a female writer, you should not just only think about, like, the gender issue, but you used to think about all different kinds of injustice. You have to think about how to improve the rights of all of the human beings. Of course, it's very ambitious, but I think that it is the very reason which made those female writers, science fiction writers, the people. She just mentioned that Atwood and Lagoon and Cleopatra, who just challenged all of these kind of issues in this dramatically degree. And as Chinese female writer, I'm thinking that I still have so many similar things to do, and which can be actually very hard, but still worth doing that. Yeah.
Thank you. So now I will have a question from James Patrick Kelly. I think for Stanley. There are a lot of technological breakthrough happening every day in China: human genetic manipulation, China on the moon, artificial intelligence, climate change. What one development are these writers most closely following?
In China.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so I think right now the most focusing area in China on technology is like AI. So just like elsewhere in the world.
Yeah.
So nothing so fancy. But another thing is like quantum communication because we have lately we just have a succeeded experiment on satellite. So to using the quantum in quantum method to transporting the message. So I'm not sure how exactly they did it, but I read the article, so it seems to be right. So I think it's also like triggering our imagination. And also another thing is like genetic engineering. So because the scandal of like the genetic editing baby was actually is from this Professor Wu Yan's university, right?
Yeah.
The
Shenzhen.
Mr. Yeah, He Jiankui. So it's quite a scandal. So everyone right now, there's some stories around that, but yeah. So I think it's quite limited actually. So focusing on these areas. So I'm pretty happy to see like solar punk, like solar punk raised by Francesco. So I think it's it's more important because it's about sustainability. So it's even more important right now because after the COVID-19, we have to rethink about the way the how we develop our society and our economy. So if we just following our old path, like everything will collapse any sooner. So yeah, the most important thing is to find out the new clear, clean energy and the new living style. So stop to exploiting our planet Earth and killing our Mother Earth. So I think it's the most important thing right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you.
I know.
And I can say that I managed to sell the Solar Punk anthology to Chinese publishers. So there you
Oh,
go.
that's cool.
we will
That's
have
cool.
Solar Punk in China translated
Yeah.
in Chinese. So another question this time for Xia Jia. Stefano, he read 100 Ghost Parade tonight, and he thinks it's really fascinating. It's like a cyberpunk reimagining of the, oh, this is difficult, Xiguai? Xinguai?
志怪, yeah,
Yeah.
志怪, yeah, strange
So, yeah, do
ghost.
you think that Chinese science fiction is related to this Xinguai?
Of course, there's like a trend of writing which had been established from the very beginning of the 20th century, that many writers, they try to combine, for example, the ghost and other traditional Chinese cultures into science fiction writing. But what I think about, like, for example, 100 Ghost Parade is that what I want to explore is that the ghost itself is not, it's not only how to say, connect with the old China, but it is how we a ghost can be an image or like the metaphor for us to capture what is happening in the 20th centuries and in the future, or in other words, is what is like a folded in the history, what is invisible in the history. For example, the abandoned people. Right now, we still have this kind of like abandoned people, especially during this big transformation of the digital capitalism. And for the people who cannot, how to say, to use the internet, even though they still have ability to be a worker, then this kind of people still have this risk to be abandoned. So there's a new kind of like abandoned or wasted people in this age. And so So I think that's why we still so fascinated in the image of like, for example, ghosts and the specters and the demons, all of this seemingly pre-modern images, because it's the best way to think about what is invisible during the so kind of the development of the human civilization, the grand, splendid civilization, because there's always some shadows and ghosts hidden or haunting in the grand history, grand story of civilization. So in this way, I think that you can find this kind of like ghost stories or ghost cyberpunk stories in different cultures, not only in China, but all around the world. And I think that's very fascinating, because this, when we mention about, for example, the magical realism from Latin America, it's not only about like what happened in the past in the pre-modern area, but what is still happening now in Latin America as an undeveloped region who witnessed this kind of like the process of modernization. And this ghost story can be a best way for them to try to express their experience during this process. So I think that's maybe my main focus in science fiction writing in recent times, in recent years, because I just realized that I have written a series of stories have some like a ghost elements inside, or some like or has something to do with, for example, the night walking. I have 3 stories have like the night walking term in the titles. Yes, like the night journey of the dragon horse, and the 100 ghosts and parade at night, and also if a traveler in the winter's night, right? So that's I think what is fascinating is that the night walking is a very good way to communicate, to have a talk with those invisible ghosts, and that's very important to listen to the ghost story, to bring their stories back to the living humans world, and to spread the stories to the living people, to make them to learn very important lessons from those ghosts. And also that's a very important task for science fiction writing, because science fiction always have to reflect this hidden part, this folded part in this development of science and technology. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's
Thank
my
you.
answer.
Thank you very much. We have 10 minutes, and I want to ask you something which I must, because I'm really personally interested. So as you have been writing more short stories than novels or longer forms, I would like to ask you if you're working on anything longer, if you plan to do it, and what are your future projects at the moment? Interest question.
So,
Stanley, you can start.
so the thing,
And then we go to
or Xia Jia, you want to pick up first?
whoever.
Stanley he already has a novel.
No,
Maybe
I mean,
more than
he has
one.
one novel. I know he has, the Waste Tide, but you're writers. You're supposed to do that, over and over again. So I'm not saying
Especially
you.
that's your opinion. That yeah,
Yes.
novel is like the longer lifeline.
Yeah,
For the
because
writers,
I
yeah.
think writing novel is like running a marathon. It takes more time and energy and devotion, I think. So you suffer a lot, but you have to force yourself sit down and write something every day. So it's like a endless journey to finish a book. But I already finished the first draft of my second novel. So during the COVID-19. So it's around, I think it's around 200,000 characters. So, but I'll redo it again. I'll restructuring It's an alternative history about China and America.
Okay.
Happened in a world where like psychedelic might become a mainstream lifestyle. So it's it's kind of risky and it's kind of crazy. So I'm not sure if it can get published yet, but I'm happy I did it. Yeah. So and but writing short stories and novella is like is is another thing. Like right, you can maybe finish one short story within a week or within a month. So it's more easier to me. So yeah. So I'm working on another book co-authoring with Dr. Kai-Fu Lee. So the author of AI
Wow.
Superpower.
Wow.
So it's half science fiction, half technology review or analysis. So it's based on the setting of like 20 years from now, like 2041. So that's the title for now. So we will examine like a different scenario using AI across the world in different industries. So this book supposed to come out next year. So it's like 20 years earlier than uh, than the time we imagine. So
Cool.
yeah, pretty much looking forward to that.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Xia Jia?
So I'm working. I'm working every
Oh,
day.
that you have to do it, man. And don't forget
That's my
Solar
job.
Punk. Don't forget.
Yeah. Sure, sure.
You, Xia Jia?
Because I just envy him. I have been working and I'm still working on my fix-up novel, Chinese Encyclopedia, and so far I have finished like 8 out of 12 stories, and I still have to push myself moving forward to complete the rest of the 4 stories, which just be harder and harder because after I finished a new one story, I realized I have this like even more pressure to follow up to finish the next because I want the next to be better than the previous one. So I'm still working on that. So that's an answer.
Well, if that will help you, you already have a publisher in Italy, so
Yeah.
I'm waiting. Go for it.
Go for it.
Yes, come on.
It's
Well, guys.
it's really terrible because this is have a very new. I don't know how to describe if it's a good or bad news to share that I just got promoted to be like the dean of our Chinese literature department.
Yeah.
So
it's a good.
This big, this very big.
In Xi'an?
That's actually in Xi'an Jiaotong University. So actually for me
cool.
it's not a good news, but which means I
As
have
a
to
writer, as a writer, it's not a good news.
No.
Yes, I have to spend more time on all of this shit work.
Oh, and you will not go back to the US?
Terrible, just a terrible, yeah. And
you will not go back to the US?
I cannot.
Oh, okay. Well,
especially based on the current situation.
Yes. All right. Yeah. We have kind of 3-4 minutes, so I think there are a couple of other questions, but I think I don't know if you want to give very short answers. Like there is a question from Rob Price. Do you expect a surge in virus pandemic related stories in the wake of COVID in the near future? I hope not, but what's your take? Do you see there will be more stories there?
I think for sure, but you have to be very careful when you taking care of these materials of COVID thing, not to like consuming this sad stories, right? You have to find the right angle, the right distance to retell the story, to make it more sense and hope people can see it from a different perspective rather than right now it's a narrative war, right? Everyone is like try to, you know, pouring water, dirty waters to each other. But I think as a writer, we have to help people to see something good, something
Yeah.
higher than this phenomenon. So yeah, I hope there's something good after COVID-19
Mo-
about this pandemic. Yeah,
Mostly it's not science fiction anymore, so
yeah,
it's not for
it's
us.
nonfiction. It's nonfiction, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, indeed, indeed. Well, so I think I want to just close some wrap up and thank everybody for being here. Thanks our guests, Chen Qiufan and Xia Jia. It's always a pleasure to meet you, and I'm very sorry we cannot meet physically and spend time together. You both have been in Italy, and I'm sure a lot of people here miss you. You really, we really had a good time together, and a lot of people are missing you. I know they write me and comments, and so you are always welcome here to come back. Maybe you can come back for the Eurocon we organize in Rome next year in March. Think about it if things get better. Fabiana, I don't know if you want to add something as closing remarks.
Just thank you again, everyone, for being here, for your time, and thank you, Francesco, and to all our guests. You were lots of people, so I'm very happy that you enjoyed this. And see you next time.
Yes.
It's next.
Next week we will have another one for translating Chinese science fiction.
Yeah. With Bella Han and Anna Di Toro. Thank you so much again.
Okay. Have a good night.
Bye.
Care.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Miss you guys.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao, ciao.
You too.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao, ciao.